Intersection, intersection, magazine, magazine.
Intersection Magazine Podcast.
Welcome to Intersection Magazine Podcast. This month of July 2024, we'll be discussing privacy with Glenn Greenwald, the dawn of a new era that's reinventing marketing with Rishad Tobaccowala. We'll be exploring some digital communities in a piece we called Cut Me Some Slack, and then a Founders Freedom piece in which we talk about when is the right time to leave the board or a certain board in which you're serving for a period of time. This is the first part of our third quarter, which means the month of the year is moving pretty fast. Thank you for subscribing as before. We hope that you can continue to engage with us and use the services that we're offering you with this audio version of the magazine. Thank you. So this month I thought it would be important to share with you a TED Talk that I heard, almost probably about maybe 8 years ago. It was with Glenn Greenwald, and what I did is I found the transcripts which I created 2 parts of the magazine for, so it will be shared in July as well as August. I also found a podcast that was featuring a man called Rishad Tobaccowala, and after putting together the Glenn Greenwald piece, I found that the conversation that Mr. Tobaccowala was having with this podcast lady that lives in Botswana had quite a lot of relevance, that the themes that they were tackling were relatively similar. The third part is an exploration of digital communities, so I'll give you some of the top digital communities that I engage with as well as others, but hope that you'll be able to pick which one comes or which one serves you best. The fourth is Founders Freedom, which is a collaboration that we are part of. This time they talk about when is the right time to leave a board for which you're in service. Now, in creating for you a course or a place where you can learn web design and web hosting, I thought it would be interesting not just to help you learn web hosting or web designing, but to also give you a glimpse into what it means to have a place where you can deploy this page or this page as a host, what you need as a host in terms of the structure, what you need in terms of are you creating it from scratch or what they call first principles. Are you using a what you see is what you get editor, such as the Dreamweavers, the Front Pages, Adobe Go Lives? Are you using a content management system? Are you creating a learning management system? Are you creating an e-commerce page? Are you creating a blog? Are you creating a forum? What kind of site are you creating? So those are some of the things that I thought would be necessary for you to learn. What kind of file structure you're going to use, where is your index page going to be located, are you creating using a hypertext markup language or HTML, are you creating or putting in some JavaScript, are you creating or using cascading style sheets, what languages are you using, is it going to be a static page or is it going to be a dynamic page? All those questions we hope to answer. So in terms of your equipment, you'll be able to use these basic editors. You will get some knowledge in packages such as WordPress, hopefully a little bit of um, Drupal, maybe some Moodle for those who are interested in learning management systems. Maybe a little bit of I mentioned Drupal, WordPress. WordPress site's also very popular. I might also show you a little bit about the use of the famous three packages, which is HTML, CSS, and JS or JavaScript, as I have learned it myself. And so you might find this pretty intense. 2 weeks, which sounds brief, but it will be quite intense. I haven't quite decided on the price of the course, but my original plan was to give out free laptops for my students so that I can encourage them to be part of this course. So we'll be talking a little bit more about this in the future. Anyhow, so in terms of what we're covering this month is we talked about Glenn Greenwald, and he came in at an important time in our history as a continent or as a planet, where we're dealing with government surveillance and subjects of that matter. It's fine if you're creating videos for yourself, for pleasure, for fun, but it's a completely different subject when your government decides that they're going to use a law maybe first created for security purposes such as terrorism. But if they're going to use that same law to become more intrusive, to find out what you've been looking at, to look at your emails, to look at your phone, and all those kinds of issues. So these are some of the subjects that he tackled. The whole subject of what do you have to hide? If you have nothing to hide, then you shouldn't be afraid if someone is watching you. He answers that. He talks about some of the activities in our major platforms such as Google and Facebook. So I think you might enjoy reading this piece. Incidentally, Glenn Greenwald is important because he was part of the team that helped bring to the surface or bring to the public's attention the famous leaks by former government agent Edward Snowden, when he released some of the documents that he had found from his time in the service. This is controversial on many fronts, and for which we don't probably have time to go into right now, but how much secrecy should our government maintain? How much should agents, the state, be allowed to release? What are their obligations to the countries and to their nations, as opposed to the obligations to the greater good of the global for citizenry or its citizenry? And what kind of laws should be there for them to protect themselves as they release information which they feel is important to release for the protection of the good of all. And just as I mentioned before, in the Founders Freedom section, we just talk about how to make a successful exit from a leadership forum. Now, the third part that we mentioned here is the part in which how are you making the decisions as you leave a board? And how are you going to make these decisions? Are you a family member? Are you a non-family member? In terms of your participation in this board, who and how are decisions being made on this board? What was the vision of the founder of this organization, and how do you fit into this bigger vision? What are the values of the organization, and has there been a mismatch between your values and the values of that organization, and your role in that board, or on that board as part of their corporate leadership team. So those are the kinds of decisions you're going to be making as you decide to extend your stay in that board or to leave when the time comes. The standard sections for our survival kit for communication are still available, as well as a glossary of terms and acronyms, technical terms and acronyms. Those are still available. Options for subscription are also available, as well as for ad space. Different parts of our services on our platforms. Those of you who are interested in podcasting, you can have a look at our ads. It's our 15-second ads costs about 80,000 Ugandan shillings. Sponsorship for a season of 12 episodes or 12 podcasts costs about $300, which is quite affordable if you ask me. The costs for having a magazine, space in the magazine, are also listed for you. Full page is about 100,000, half a page is 50, a quarter of a page is about 25,000. You can also come in and learn how to play chess with us. Our teaching is pretty simple. We split the game into 3 parts. This is what standard people do, standard chess coaches do. The opening game, the middle game, and the end game. We also have our prices for web design and hosting. You'll appreciate all of this a lot more when you've had a look at the course that we offer, so you'll realize why complex pages are charged a little bit more than for simple pages. We'll give you a look into what it takes for us to get into the process of designing for you. We've been strict in some areas, while in other areas we haven't adhered too strongly to this, but it forms a philosophy of how we work. Sometimes when you're designing pages for clients, they will ask you to give them discounts or reduce the rates, and so if you have a structure that splits down how you build your page, and this will help you to be able to eliminate parts in which the client may not feel unnecessary, or which may end up eating into your time and costing you the quality of your product. Now, the writings of this author are quite complex. You might prefer reading what Richard Tabakowala has written as opposed to glimpsing it in the way in which I have presented it. But he has structured it pretty well, from audience to brand to content to data to enterprise. He calls this the ABCD of reinvented marketing. And he lists all the ideas falling under audience, all the ideas falling under brand, all the ideas falling under content, all the ideas falling under data, and all the ideas falling under enterprise. You might also enjoy looking him up and listening to his podcast where he's been hosted, as did I. He talks about the 5 major shifts: a shift in audience, a shift in brand, a shift in content, a shift in data, and a shift in enterprise. And he describes these all. Really technical, but you might appreciate as did I. Now, the piece I was talking about was by a podcast done by a lady called Rofani. It's called Linking Data to Human Insights with Richard Tabakowala. Now, in my film recommendation, based also on some of what I've written before, and I recommend that you listen to this in light of some of the current changes that are taking place in places like Kenya, maybe as well as Bangladesh and possibly Uganda in the future. You have to be careful not to get your movement or your project hijacked by 2 things, or by 1 thing in particular, which will be juxtaposed onto or alongside your current drive or theme or project, especially if it's something that's supposed to drive group action. What am I talking about? Well, you're in the field or you're in the public eye taking part in a demonstration, you're gaining momentum. You will be very tempted to use that momentum to achieve some kind of social status or to get likes. If you've watched social media these days, you hear people say, let's make this person famous. Now, this is a good thing, but it also can be a bad thing because in our days, when governments are dealing with people who have been disruptive or who are leaders in disruptive movements, they usually look for the leaders. So when you put your face out there and you decide or desire to make someone famous, you're also putting them directly into the line of fire. So that if at some point those in power wish to punish visible leaders that are part of the movement, then they will know who you are. The other thing that can go wrong is your movement can lose momentum because all of a sudden the spotlight has been turned on you as a person, and many of these movements are thriving and lasting precisely because they do not have a leader. They are organic. It's people that are starting on their own and driving and forcing change. So you might enjoy watching 15 Million Merits. I found it on Netflix, and it features a time unlike our own, not very different from our own. I mean, because you got these people that are stuck in this place. Their lives are being monitored. One of them decides to make a difference or a change, and at the heart, at the peak of his revolt, one of the people that is watching him decides to turn him into a star and quickly grabs him from his position and takes away from the effectiveness of his movement, effectively squashing him. Please watch that. Hope it makes sense in the way I've described it. You might enjoy it, you might not, but I think it has some very interesting ideas. My book recommendation was a book by a friend of the family. It's called An African Dream. It's a book about vision, but it's also written predominantly for a faith-based audience, but with a lot of emphasis on the African culture. As always, we have some ads on events that you might appreciate if you're in the area. In the last 4 months, what we covered, and then some ideas from a group called Virola on productivity tools. What are the tools that we shared? Well, there was Virola, Rocket Chat, Fleep, Microsoft Teams, Shanti, Troop Messenger, Zulip, Google Chat, Mattermost, and Discord. And of course, Slack. I mainly compare Discord and Slack because those are the tools I'm familiar with, but Virola had a whole lot of comparisons available for discussion. Talked about which platforms they exist on, how much they're charging, etc., etc. I have a poem that I've shared as before, and then my snacks, more snacks that I create for the Hope First Bakery. Oh, that was quite intense. Thank you for listening in that extended podcast. I'd appreciate if you subscribe to our magazine, as well as, of course, support the podcast through advertising and through the sponsorship of seasons. The prices I've mentioned before, but if you need more information, don't hesitate to get in touch with us. Nicholas Kelder, your host here for Hope First, as well as Intersection Magazine podcast and Intersection Magazine for those of you who are readers. Thank you for listening and have yourselves a great week.
Intersection Magazine Podcast.